Hello everyone, this is 12th episode of the Pajama Talks, and today we have two guests with us. One is Shelley Lambert, and hi Shelley.
Hello.
Shelley is a software engineering manager at Red Hat, and our second guest today is Vasily Sazukin. Hi Vasya.
Hello everybody.
Vasily is also an engineering manager at Wrike. Let's start from the beginning. So Shelley, maybe you can let our audience know you and who are you?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Shelley Lambert. I've been a software developer for nearly 3 decades. I started off writing a lot of network management software, and I was lucky enough out of university to land in a role where I got to write a lot of prototype network discovery things under funding from DARPA. I spent nearly a decade writing network management software and then was recruited into the IBM J9 Java virtual machine team. Back when, if you recall, when IPv6 was added to the Java spec. So I spent some time implementing the full stack for that. Since then, I worked at IBM for nearly 16 years and recently had moved to the global QA lead role in IBM for IBM runtimes, and now have transitioned over because I am on the technical steering committee at Adopt Open JDK, which is now transforming into Eclipse Adoptium, where I'm a PMC member and a project lead. And that mission was moved into Red Hat. So we transitioned into Red Hat. So now I'm landed in this role, working for Red Hat happily and looking forward to a lot of the really cool stuff we're going to do under the Eclipse Adoptium banner.
So many software developers and myself in the past, we're thinking and I'm thought that testing is something really boring and come on, testing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to write code, not to test my code, because I want to build a spaceship, not the service around the spaceship. So what do you think about that?
I think that way of thinking is a losing way of thinking. No, I agree with you that it is a common attitude. I disagree that the discipline of QA is lesser. I think that we should be elevating how we test our software. When I recruit or look for people who are working on this, it is a requirement that you be able to write software, because a QA developer and automation specialist is writing a lot of software. It's just higher up on the stack often.
What do you think? Is manual testing is a previous age? And in the future we will hire only quality assurance automation managers and software developers? What's your opinion?
I actually very much dislike when people have silos. This is this role, this is this role. The way we work at Eclipse Adoptium and the way I work in any project that I'm at is think of it at like you're at a startup. In a startup, you're gonna do whatever it takes to get the quality product out. If I have to go and change product code, or if I have to go and write a test, I should be willing and able to do all of that. And if I can't, I seek help.
I think we could talk about quality assurance, T-shaped people with programming skills, like skill of product development, or we could talk about T-shapes like manual quality assurance with skill of its automation.
Every developer writing code needs to have some tests in place. That's that layer of unit tests or something that's going to verify as I work. If I'm writing code, I don't backslide. Nowadays, we have good methods for automating all of that. The manual testing piece, which is, I think, important, but there's less and less need for it because we've been able to be very good at how we automate things. But there is always a reason to do some form of manual testing. And I guess you could also say we outsource it when we send a product out and a customer reports something that's wrong. So when we assess even problem reports that come back to us from consumers, we should be thinking about how do we improve our QA story.
I have some feeling that these days we have so much. The market itself is so competitive. We have this paradigm that you should ship faster and faster and faster, and all the tools, all the systems, all like scripting languages, they're about that. You should ship fast. You should I don't know, catch problems on the production, and your users will report something. And idea of let's build something with a great quality, but we will build it for years. It's now gone. No one will build super quality product. Everyone around is shipping kind of like mediocre quality software because market demands it. But it's fast. Yeah. So what do you think about this idea that no one these days, with the startup era and the era of fast shipping, scripting, all these things, no one needs actually quality software?
So it goes to the thing of don't mistake agility for haste. So first of all, because you can be fast doesn't mean you should be fast if you introduce risk. So you have to measure your tolerance for risk of upsetting your customers or causing a severe security breach or something. What is the risk for you to release a piece of software if there are still unknowns within it, right? So we make choices all the time, and that's kind of the notion of the technical debt piece. Is technical debt is just a choice you've made to say to maybe you want to get something out quickly, so you do it in a certain way. The important part then is what's your plan after you've released it? Do you have it in your plan to repay that debt, or are you going to let it accumulate until the point where you're paralyzed and you have no longer a way to support your product?
I think it's a great situation when you could calculate that risks. But for open source software or JDK, it's a very complex software, and you even couldn't imagine how external customer will use it on their productions. So, could you share your knowledge about how to test such products?
I'll say one approach that we're looking at, obviously, is also to learn from what gets reported. But I think we can also innovate too. So some of the pieces are for Open JDK or that language, even just the combinations of inputs that you can give it. So we can apply things like combinatorial test design, where we say, actually, based on research and how software is written, most defects are found by the combination of two inputs. So we could use an approach that says we will vary and do pairwise testing and have a very high functional coverage, 85 or 90%, but a very minimal number of tests that are needed. And it's not just the functional correctness. We also obviously have to look at performance. We have to look at scalability. We have to look at stress testing. So I think we are constantly evolving the tests alongside of the product and keeping it as active in the development side of the test pieces as probably more actively than some of the changes in the language itself.
When you're creating a product that people pay you money, on one hand, you are kind of owe them because they give you the money. But on the other hand, it helps you to somehow make a priorities.
Sure.
But how these things are working in open source area? For example, you have an issue from one of the users, and because it's kind of open source, you don't owe this person anything,
Mhm.
but on the other hand, they are your customers. And how to work with the priorities of bugs, for example.
Well, some of them are obvious because some of them will have multiple reports or 40 people chiming in to say, yes, also my problem. From the perspective of how do we work? Obviously, a piece of our work has to be making sure our technical debt, we are working at reducing it, because we may make choices where we've increased it, and we want to always have that in plan to address some of it each part of our, for whatever sprint we're doing. But then there's also the piece around innovation. There's also the piece around keeping up with the product. We would do a piece of work around making sure we're keeping up with the features. So if there's a new feature in OpenJDK, have we enabled all the testing? Are there new tests that are required? There's the innovation mode, which is, could we apply a deep learning model to try to automate some triage because it's killing us? And how I would prioritize that mode would be looking at the things that cost us the most energy and seeing if those areas could be improved by applying new tech or new approach or whatever. And then the fourth mode I would call open source. I call it open source readiness mode, but this is thinking about reducing our dependency on specific solutions that we have to maintain, seeing if we can move to using open source tools, seeing maybe if we can improve how we work in the open, making sure we could include more collaborators, inviting collaboration with research institutions, that kind of thing.
And I will continue with another topic. In Java, we have a lot of backward compatibility. It's like holy grail of Java. And I think testing backward compatibility of JDK is the most complicated topic in the world. So please share some insights or knowledge about how do you do it?
We made a choice when we pulled together this Adoptium quality assurance or Adopt OpenJDK quality assurance program to actually be able to handle all different versions out of one single repo. So instead of having to backport across many different repos, and you notice that we have this new release cadence or newer release cadence with Java. So every couple of months you're releasing something. So being able to handle all of those variations out of a single repository and overlay filters on our test material and overlay filters on our DevOps automation scripts was the first step, so that I don't have to spend 4 hours making changes across a bunch of repos. I can have a single repo with a filter on it, so that if I want to test something in Java 8 versus Java 11 versus Java 16, it's the same script that runs. It's just a little piece of automation that auto detects, oh, you're testing this version. The issue there, of course, is that as we have new releases and new features, it will be a lot more tests that get run. So we do have to manage time and resources accordingly.
I don't know, is Java OpenJDK or any other Java solutions used in highly critical production environments like maybe real-time systems, and how to test it in for example, just imagine if I don't know, you have to run space shuttle or anything like that, how to test software for that.
When I worked at IBM and we had J9 had a real-time JIT. So they have a hard real-time and soft real-time. And we have a customer who was using it that has a very mission-critical use case. So on nuclear submarines. In that case, there is a heavy amount of responsibility and pressure to make sure that things are fully tested. There is a very heavy process around, or a heavier amount of testing and process around that kind of thing. with those agreements. Obviously, it's owned both by the producer of the product, but also the people who would take on that product. So they also had a set of test criteria and a lot of testing that would happen on that side.
In one of my previous companies, we were proud that we could test some parts of our software right inside our production environment. So, what do you think? Testing things under production environment, is it good or is it evil and we must avoid it as much as we can?
From the point of view of that layers of testing, right? You start at the bottom as low on the stack as you can and do the unit testing function by each function tested as thoroughly as you can. You find a lot of stuff at the opcode level. You go all the way up, and as you go up that pyramid, which whether or not that's still valid or is in question here, you go up that pyramid, things cost more and more. So you have to have it be in plan how you're doing it, so that when you release an unarmed nuclear missile, it doesn't come back and dive in, because each one of those tests costs a lot of money. What happens if you don't test in production? If the only thing that happens is that someone's application doesn't start properly or runs slowly, that's not as big of a risk as some other applications where someone's pacemaker stops, or there are certain types of software that matter more, and in which case I think that pyramid is still valid and very important. It doesn't apply to maybe a lot of the software out there today that is for, I'll say, lighthearted applications. But for mission critical stuff, I think it very much applies. There needs to be a discipline around it.
And if we're talking about testing pyramid, in our microservice world, microservices everywhere. And I think testing pyramid is not very suitable for its world. So, for example, I don't want to write a lot of unit tests. It's like a lot of memes where you test one door, test another door, and clap. So I want to write only functional tests, a lot of functional tests, and a small part of unit tests. And what is your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think it's a mistake for them not to use some form of unit test or API test, because really what a microservice is an API. So it's a no-brainer, and it's very not costly to test an API. And from the system level perspective, microservices that have to interact and microservices that are all fall under a certain set of rules, like we're going to be able to roll back and back up things, we're going to be able to have credential management or whatever it is that they are sharing. There's still a need for that system level test, or you don't know what risk you're at if it doesn't work.
You said that QA engineers, QA automation engineers, so like people involved in testing, they should know some about software development, or maybe they should be a software developers. Does it mean that actually this border between quality assurance engineer and software engineer is kind of imaginary, and at the end of the day we should have just the software engineers who care about quality? But like, why we still have separate departments or even separate company for quality assurance and for software development?
In some cases, a software developer has to be very focused because they're working on a narrow piece and they're specialists. So it's more about where you are looking and how your perspective and what you're looking at. To me, it shouldn't be about what skills we have. I'd like to see everyone have a skill level where they could step in anywhere. In some cases, I've seen where a company may hire a lot of manual QA people who don't have software development skills because the job at the moment is clicking buttons and that kind of thing. But that's a kind of a short-sighted view. Like, if we're here at QA, let's get here next year in terms of our skills, in terms of our approaches. So we should be innovating as quickly or faster than the software development team, if there is this pretend division. Once you work on improving your skills, you make sure you're sharing it with others to lift them up.
I think many companies were or currently in a situation where there is no specific tooling for the specific problems on the market. So they're in a situation where they must think, must I contribute to another solution just to adopt it to my problems, or I could create my homemade solution? And usually they prefer the second way. They create some small bicycle. After that it became bigger, and sometimes, like in big companies like Yandex, it could grow to the homemade enterprise solution like ClickHouse, I think. But you must maintain it all the time. So, what is your opinion? How to answer this question? How to distinguish the situation when you must create your homemade solution, or you must contribute to another solution just to share your knowledge, share your work with others?
We have that open source readiness mode where we actively look for ways to take out proprietary solutions or replace them with open. And there's a number of reasons for that. And one of the reasons is then you're not the only team maintaining the thing. You get the benefit of picking up other teams and other people's improvements on the tool that you've selected. For me, I prefer to try to use something from an open source project or a shared project. That's partly why we developed Aqua, was to have a community of people work on something that seems a no-brainer to me, because we're not in competition over tests or how we test. In fact, every company in the world reduces the number of people working on tests. And so you're working each in your own companies on the exact same things, but apart and behind your corporate walls, where you could be coming together, working on something together.
Maybe some corporations, and not just groups of people, they over and over reinventing the wheel, because in software development, when you develop something that does a lot of things, and testing framework is not just a one function or one something, you always will come with will end up with some crossroads. So you should choose something. And for example, if I am if I with a company, I prefer way A, and other group of individuals, they prefer way B. And when I open source something, of course, I can just fork it, but still it's not very convenient. So it's always battle of groups, of interest, of crossroads, and how to make the situation win-win situation, because sometimes you have to choose.
Even in terms of a DevOps pipeline, to decide what CI system to use. So at our project, it was decided we're going to use Jenkins to run our pipelines through. But we also recognize that if we wanted to make something that other people could consume, we should allow them the ability to run outside of that CI system and use a different one. QA is a software development challenge, right? We should be thinking about it as, how can I make this in a modular, portable way that the maximum number of people could use it? And then when we build tools to go and triage results, or we're looking at that, we also have an interface that says, I can query anything. So I'm going to go get that. I'm going to get the results in a standardized way, which we enforce because there's 20 different test frameworks and they all produce different types of results. So we enforce we squeeze those results into a standard way so that then we could look at them in a standard way and exclude them in a standard way and do that. In our design decisions around Aqua, we just decided, yeah, that's the reality. People are going to be at those crossroads, but that's okay. We'll design for that. You know what it reminds me of? You go in North America, you go to a grocery store and there are 25,000 products in the grocery store so that people feel that they have choice.
Maybe it's a good bridge to the non-technical topics, but there is some mysterious words like food forests. And
right.
yeah, I was scratching my head like, what is that?
What the heck is that?
Yeah.
My passion hobby is to actually create and grow food forests around the cities, like a natural forest, but insert edibles in it. So fruit trees, nut trees, edible mushrooms, perennial plants. You don't have to keep water, you don't water it, you don't have to weed it. It is intentionally wild, but producing food. What we do, we have a few community food forests, and the output of those forests goes to food bank. And it also is going to workshops to teach people how to preserve food, how to prune, and how to propagate plants, so that if people wanted to start their own, they could know how to do that with not too much cost. My next piece of work will actually be to make the plan for community apple press, community nut hullers and nut crackers and stuff, so that can be automated and be used by the community.
When we are software developers, our happiness is really quick. I mean, you can write some small piece of function, small piece of software, I don't know, any like a worklet, whatever, and you can watch that it's working, and this is your piece of happiness, piece of dopamines and other. But when we are software managers, it's almost the same as apple trees. You will not get the results like this right now. You should work on things that you're working on. I don't know, product releases or something like this. And happiness is not that fast. How do you feel this way, and how you solve it? Maybe Vasya, we can start from you.
Currently, I do prefer to grow people's skills. They create some projects, they write some code, and when I look at the results, I understand that part of me inside this result, and of course I'm happy at these moments because I gave some knowledge, gave some skills to make these results available. So Shelley, and what about you?
Yeah, I like your answer. If my role in terms of leading a team or helping people is that they can become their best. If I can see that they reach their full potential and producing great code, working well with their colleagues to help lift their colleagues up, and they themselves are enjoying the work and engaged, then I've created an environment and a culture that encourages that. I've rewarded the right things, so that makes me happy. But it is a long-term plan. It's like building a food forest. You don't get fruit in the first year sometimes. It takes a while to build it up to the point where it's working really well.
Thank you, dear viewers, and thank you very much, Shelley and Vasily, that you've been here. It was my pleasure to be a host on this event, and
I very much enjoyed talking to you both, and thank you very, very much for having me here.